Chapter 1. Shadows and Mercy. The old quarter of Murkdusk wore its poverty like a cloak, threadbare but dignified. Narrow alleys wound between buildings that leaned on each other for support, mortar cracked but holding, roofs patched with whatever materials could be scavenged. Laundry hung between windows on fraying rope. Children played in courtyards too small for their energy. And everywhere the smell of cook fires and desperation mixed with the faint hope that tomorrow might be kinder than today. Caelithra moved through the shadows like she'd been born to them. She had been, in a way. Nithoria had been a realm of eternal twilight, where light and shadow danced in perfect balance. Here on murk dusks, in forgotten corners, the shadows felt different. Heavier, sadder, full of people trying to survive rather than thrive. It reminded her too much of what her realm had become before the darkness consumed it entirely. She wore her field gear, dark, practical, nothing that would draw attention. The pack cloak hung from her shoulders, its enchantments muted to avoid detection. Her silver katana, Moonshadow, rested across her back, and the Nithorian crown pendant lay hidden beneath her collar. To any casual observer, she was just another operative. Not a queen. Not the last hope of a dead realm. Just Karina. Beside her, barely visible even to her enhanced sight, shade moved like living darkness. Kaelin Vorketh, captain of her guard, protector of a princess who had become a queen in exile. He wore black on black, his form flickering at the edges as if reality couldn't quite decide whether he was solid or shadow. His silver eyes, the only part of him that truly stood out, tracked every movement in the alley ahead. They'd been tracking the medical supply route for 3 days now. Small shipments, moved at irregular intervals, always through the old quarter where official oversight was thin and people knew better than to ask questions. Ashley's customs logs showed discrepancies: sealed vials, ampules, surgical supplies disappearing into carts bound for outer farms, but never arriving at their listed destinations. Someone was diverting medical supplies. And given what the pack knew about Ultranatius's child, the why wasn't hard to guess. 2 blocks ahead, Shade murmured, his voice barely a whisper carried on shadow. The cart stopped at the supply depot. 3 handlers, 1 supervisor. No visible guards, but the wards are active. Caelithra's eyes narrowed. She could see the faint shimmer of protective enchantments around the depot's entrance. Standard security, nothing sophisticated, but enough to trigger alarms if someone tried to force entry. Can you get past them? Easily. Shade's tone carried the quiet confidence of a man who had mastered what he was. Give me 3 minutes. I'll disable the alarms and mark the supervisor. Once we confirm the cargo, we follow it. No kills unless necessary, Caelithra said softly. These are handlers, not soldiers. They might not even know what they're moving. Shade glanced at her, silver eyes gleaming in the dim light. As you command, my queen. There was no mockery in the title, just acknowledgement. In the field, they were equals, captain and operative, 2 shadows working as one. But he never forgot who she was, and neither did she. He stepped backward and simply dissolved, not vanishing, but spreading into the darkness around him until there was nothing left to see. Caelithra felt the air shift as he moved through the shadows, a ripple in reality that only another Umbranite would notice. She counted silently. 1 minute. 2. While she waited, her gaze drifted to the building across from the depot. 3rd floor, broken window, laundry hanging inside. A family. She could hear the faint sounds of children, young voices, laughter that sounded too thin, too forced. The kind of laughter that came from kids trying to stay cheerful despite empty stomachs. Her hand moved to the small pack at her side. Inside, dried fruit, hard bread, medical supplies, bandages, antiseptic, fever reducers. Nothing expensive. Nothing that would draw attention. Just enough to help someone make it through another week. Shade reappeared beside her without sound, coalescing from shadow into solid form. Done. Wards are looped, They'll read clean for the next 10 minutes. The cargo is medical, vials of something alchemical, sealed containers marked with healer's runes, and 3 crates of surgical supplies. Supervisors signing off on transport to outer farms, dusk departure. That matches Ravina's intel, Caelithra said. We follow the cart. See where it really goes. Shade nodded, then his eyes followed hers to the building across the street, the broken window, the thin laughter. He didn't need to ask. We have 4 minutes before the cart moves, he said quietly. Enough time. Caelithra pulled the pack from her side and handed it to him. 3rd floor, broken window, family with children. Leave it inside the door. Don't let them see you. Shade took the pack without hesitation. And you? Ground floor, east side. I heard coughing earlier, someone's sick. I'll leave medicine. She pulled a second, smaller pouch from her belt. Inside, fever medicine, honey, clean bandages. They moved in opposite directions, 2 shadows splitting to do small kindnesses in a world that rarely offered them. Caelithra shadow-stepped, reality bending around her as she slipped through darkness and emerged in the ground floor hallway of the tenement. The coughing was louder here, wet and rasping, coming from behind a door marked with faded paint. She knelt, set the pouch on the doorstep, and knocked twice before stepping back into shadow. She heard the door crack open. A woman's voice, cautious. Hello? Silence. Is someone there? Caelithra watched from the darkness as the woman, middle-aged, tired, wearing clothes that had been mended too many times, spotted the pouch. Her breath caught. She looked left, right, saw no one, then quickly pulled the pouch inside and shut the door. Through the thin walls, Caelithra heard her whisper, It's medicine. Someone left medicine. A child's voice hoarse from coughing. Who? I don't know, love. I don't know. Caelithra stepped back into the alley, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. Not quite satisfaction, not quite grief. Just the small, hollow ache of knowing she could ease one person's suffering while her entire realm remained unreachable. Shade materialized beside her, pack gone, eyes unreadable. The family will find it when they wake. I left it with the bread they have left. They'll think it's a blessing. Maybe it is, Caelithra said quietly. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 exiles helping strangers in a city that wasn't theirs, a realm that would never be home. We can't save everyone, Shade said, his voice low. No, Caelithra agreed, but we can save someone. And that has to be enough. Is it? Shade asked. Enough for you? She looked at him, her captain, her last connection to Nethoria, the man who had searched for her for years and never given up. It has to be, she said, because if it's not, then we've already lost. Shade nodded once, accepting that truth the way soldiers accept hard orders. Then his posture shifted, professional again. The cart's moving. We need to go. Caelithra pulled her hood up, checked that Moonshadow was secure, and let the shadows gather around her. Not the tendrils, never the tendrils unless she had no choice, but the comfortable darkness that let her move unseen, that made her a ghost in the world of light. Together, they followed the cart. The route took them through the old quarter's back lanes, away from the main thoroughfares where patrols might ask questions. The cart was pulled by a single draft horse, its driver hunched and quiet, clearly someone paid to move cargo and not ask what it contained. 2 men walked alongside, guards, but not professional ones. Local muscle hired for the job. Caelithra and Shade followed from the rooftops, shadow-stepping from building to building, staying above the sightlines. The city moved below them, traders closing shops, families heading home, the slow exhale of a settlement transitioning from day to night. They're not going toward outer farms, Shade observed. Wrong direction entirely. No, Caelithra agreed, watching the cart turn down a narrow service road. They're heading toward the old Kiln House district. Shade's eyes narrowed. That area's been marked clear by the 5077th, if they're using it as a waypoint. Then they're counting on no one checking, Caelithra finished. Smart. Hide in plain sight, in a place that's already been searched. The cart stopped at the edge of an abandoned courtyard, near a cluster of derelict buildings that had once been workshops. The driver climbed down, stretched, and one of the guards moved to the back of the cart to begin unloading. "We need to see what's in those crates," Caelithra said. "Confirm the contents match Ravina's intel." "I can get closer," Shade offered. "They won't see me." Caelithra nodded. "I'll cover you. If anything goes wrong." "It won't," Shade said with the quiet certainty of a man who had done this 1,000 times. "But if it does, I'll signal. Don't come in unless I call." "Kaelin," she started, using his true name. He looked at her, silver eyes steady. "I know, my queen. Trust me." She did. Completely. 3 minutes. "Then I'm coming in." He smiled, just barely, and stepped backward into shadow. Caelithra watched him go, then positioned herself on a rooftop with clear sightlines to the courtyard. Her hand rested on Moonshadow's hilt, ready but not drawn. She could feel the shadows around her, patient and waiting. Not the tendrils. Not yet. Just the comfortable darkness that had always been part of her, even before she remembered what she truly was. Below, Shade moved through the courtyard like a ghost. The guards never saw him. The driver never heard him. He was simply there, beside the cart, examining the cargo, reading the markings on the crates, and then he was gone again, pulled back into shadow before reality could catch up. He reappeared beside Caelithra 30 seconds later, silent as thought. "Medical supplies," he confirmed. "Alchemical vials sealed with healer's runes, surgical instruments, and 3 containers marked for cold storage. The seals match what we found in the Kiln House cache. This is the same supply chain." "Destination?" Caelithra asked. "The crates are marked for temporary storage here, then transfer at dusk tomorrow. No final destination listed, but one of the guards mentioned the usual drop when he thought no one was listening." Caelithra's jaw tightened. "We need to follow the next transfer. See where the usual drop actually is." "Agreed," Shade said, "but that means staying in murk dusk another day." "The pack will want to move on the child's location soon." "Then we'll need to report this to Ashley tonight," Caelithra said. "Give her the route, the timing, and let her decide whether to intercept or let it run." Shade nodded, then hesitated. "Karina?" She looked at him. He rarely used that name anymore. Not since she'd remembered who she truly was. "The trader," Shade said quietly. "If this supply chain leads back to him, if he's involved in moving the child." "Then we'll deal with him," Caelithra said, her voice cold. "But not here." "Not yet. We do this smart. We gather the evidence, we confirm his involvement, and then we act." "You spared him once," Shade said. "You stripped his birthright and let him walk away." "He won't make that mistake twice. If we face him again—" "I know," Caelithra interrupted, shadows flickering at her fingertips. "I know. And I won't make that mistake again either." The darkness around her fingers coiled tighter, not tendrils, not yet, but close, close enough that Shade noticed. He stepped closer, his presence calm, grounding. "We do this together," he said quietly, "Queen and Captain, as we always have." The shadows around her fingers eased. She exhaled slowly, pulling control back, centering herself the way she'd learned to in the weeks since the courtyard. "Together," she agreed. They stayed on the rooftop until the guards finished unloading and the cart moved on, empty now, heading back toward the market district. The crates remained in the courtyard, covered with canvas, and left unguarded. Whoever was running this operation was confident, or arrogant, enough to believe no one would bother checking. "We should mark this location," Caelithra said. "Leave a trace for Ashley's patrols to find if something goes wrong." Shade pulled a small rune stone from his belt, standard Echo Division issue, keyed to Ashley's command frequency. He shadow-stepped down to the courtyard, placed it beneath one of the crates where it wouldn't be noticed, and returned in less than 10 seconds. "Done," he said. If the crates move before we report, Ashley will know. Caelithra nodded, satisfied. Then we're done here. Let's get back to base before. A sound, faint, behind them. The scrape of boots on stone. Both of them spun, weapons half drawn, shadows gathering instinctively. A figure stood at the edge of the rooftop, hands raised, posture non-threatening. Elven, male, wearing the colours of the 5077th Combat Engineers. Easy, the soldier said, voice calm. I'm not here to fight. Just doing my patrol route. Caelithra relaxed slightly, but didn't lower her guard entirely. This rooftop isn't on the standard patrol. No, the soldier agreed, but I saw two shadows moving through the old quarter and figured I should check. Echo Division operatives? Affiliated, Shade said, his tone giving nothing away. Running surveillance. Nothing that concerns the 5077th. The soldier studied them for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. Just be careful down there. The old quarter's quiet, but quiet doesn't always mean safe. Lot of people desperate enough to do stupid things. We know, Caelithra said softly. We're trying to help. The soldier's expression shifted, something like respect. Yeah, I figured. He turned to leave, then paused. Word of advice? If you're tracking the medical supply route, be careful. Someone powerful is protecting that chain. We've tried to investigate twice. Both times, the trail went cold before we could get anywhere. We'll be careful, Caelithra said. The soldier nodded once, then disappeared down the ladder. Shade and Caelithra exchanged a glance. Someone powerful is protecting it, Shade repeated quietly. The trader, Caelithra said, certainty settling in her chest like ice. It has to be. Then we need to move fast, Shade said, before he realizes we're closing in. Caelithra looked out over the old quarter, the broken buildings, the struggling families, the weight of a city trying to survive. Somewhere out there, the trader was moving pieces on a board they couldn't see yet. Somewhere out there, a child who should never have existed was being hidden, protected, moved like cargo. And somewhere, impossibly far away, Nythoria waited in darkness. We report to Ashley, Caelithra said. Tonight. Give her everything we have. Then we prepare. For what? Shade asked. Caelithra's hand tightened on Moonshadow's hilt. For whatever comes next. They shadow-stepped off the rooftop, dissolving into darkness, leaving only the faint echo of their presence behind. 2 hours later, Murk Dusk Base Command Center. Ashley stood at the tactical display, arms crossed, Beta resting at her feet. The Timberwolf's ears flicked toward the door a second before it opened. Caelithra and Shade entered, hoods down, exhaustion visible in the set of their shoulders, but discipline holding them upright. Report, Ashley said without preamble. Medical supply diversion confirmed, Caelithra said, moving to the display. Cart route, temporary storage location, and transfer schedule. She pulled a data chip from her belt and slotted it into the terminal. The map updated, showing the route they'd tracked. The supplies are being held in the old Kilnhouse district, scheduled for transfer at dusk tomorrow. Destination unknown, but one of the guards mentioned the usual drop. Ashley studied the map, eyes narrowing. The Kilnhouse district. That's been cleared. Which makes it perfect, Shade said. Hide in a place that's already been searched. No one looks twice. Contents? Ashley asked. Alchemical vials, surgical supplies, cold storage containers, Caelithra said. All sealed with healer's runes. Matches the intel from Ravina's cache. Ashley's jaw tightened. So it's real. Someone's maintaining medical care. And moving supplies through murk dusk to do it, Caelithra confirmed, which means this is a waypoint, not the destination. Outer farms? Ashley asked. Possibly, Shade said. But the cart didn't go toward outer farms tonight. It went to storage. We think the next transfer will reveal the actual route. Ashley was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she looked at them both. You left a trace? Runestone, Shade confirmed. Keyed to your command frequency. If the crates move before we act, you'll know. Good. Ashley pulled up another overlay. Patrol schedules, checkpoint locations, customs logs. I'll coordinate with the 5077th. If we're going to intercept the next transfer, we do it clean. No alerts, no noise, no chance for them to scatter the operation. Agreed, Caelithra said. Ashley looked at them both, something like respect in her expression. You two did good work tonight. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be long. Caelithra nodded, but didn't move immediately. Ashley, there's something else. Ashley raised an eyebrow. One of the 5077th mentioned that previous investigations into this supply chain went cold. Someone powerful is protecting it. Ashley's expression darkened. You think it's the trader? I know it is, Caelithra said, and there was no doubt in her voice, just cold certainty. Shade's silver eyes gleamed in the low light. If he's involved in this, if he's protecting the child, then we'll deal with him, Ashley said firmly, but not tonight. Tonight, we plan. Tomorrow, we move. And when we have proof, solid, undeniable proof, then we decide what justice looks like. Caelithra's hand drifted to the Nithorian crown pendant beneath her collar. She felt its warmth, its connection to a realm she couldn't reach. Justice, she said quietly. Yes, that's what we'll call it. Ashley studied her for a moment, then nodded. Dismissed. Both of you. Get food, get rest. I'll call you when we're ready to move. Caelithra inclined her head, then left with Shade at her side. Beta lifted her head, watching them go, then looked up at Ashley. I know, Ashley murmured, hand resting on the wolf's head. They're carrying a lot. But they're holding it together. For now. Beta's tail thumped once against the floor. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere in the old quarter, families found care packages left by shadows. Somewhere in a forgotten courtyard, medical supplies waited for transfer. And somewhere far away, in a realm sealed by darkness, Nithoria waited for a queen who couldn't come home. But tonight 2 exiles helped strangers, and that was enough. Chapter 2. Ghosts in the Ruins. The medical supply trail led them 3 miles east of the main settlement, into a section of murk dusk that time had forgotten. Ancient ruins rose from the overgrown landscape like broken teeth, remnants of a civilization that had flourished before the realm's current inhabitants had even arrived. Crumbling archways framed empty doorways, and walls that had once stood proud now leaned at precarious angles, held upright more by habit than structural integrity. Caelithra moved through the undergrowth without sound, her pack cloak's enchantments muting even the whisper of fabric against leaves. The Nithorian crown pendant beneath her collar pulsed faintly. Another Umbra Knight was near. She didn't need the warning. She could feel Shade's presence beside her, a shadow within shadows, barely more substantial than the darkness between the trees. They'd been tracking the diverted medical supplies for a day. The trail had been careful, deliberate. Someone knew how to avoid detection, but not well enough to fool 2 Umbra Knights who could read the darkness itself. There, Shade murmured, his voice barely a breath of sound. He gestured toward the largest structure, a partially collapsed temple or fortress, its purpose lost to time. Movement. Multiple contacts. Caelithra's enhanced vision picked out the details Shade had already noted. Guard positions, poorly concealed but present, the flicker of firelight from within the ruins, and something else, something that made her blood run cold. Energy signatures, faint but unmistakable. A portal. They're trying to reactivate it, she said quietly. Shade nodded, his silver eyes reflecting the dim moonlight. We need reinforcements. He pulled a compact beacon from his tactical vest, standard Echo Division issue, keyed to Ashley's command frequency. With a single press, the device activated, sending an encrypted burst transmission to Murk Dusk base. Black Dawn remnant cell discovered. Old portal site. requesting immediate backup. The beacon's acknowledgement light blinked once. Message received. ETA? Caelithra asked. 30 minutes minimum, Shade replied, already moving forward to get a better view. Probably closer to 40. They advanced in silence, using the ruin's natural cover to approach undetected. As they drew closer, the full scope of the situation became clear. 20 figures, maybe more, most clustered near the temple's entrance, barely moving, wounded, clearly. Their armor was blood-stained and torn, bandages visible even from a distance. These were survivors, not soldiers. Men and women who had been left behind when Black Dawn's leadership fled after Draven's fall. But 4 others moved with purpose and discipline. Elite operatives, their armor bearing the telltale modifications of Voidstone enhancement. They carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy, the same rifles that had nearly killed Rodriguez during the fortress battle. 1 stood watch near the entrance. 2 worked on something inside the temple. The 4th paced between the wounded, checking on them with what might have been concern under different circumstances. 4 elites, Shade counted. Maybe 5 if there's another inside. The rest are no threat. Caelithra studied the wounded soldiers. Some lay completely still, barely breathing. Others sat propped against walls, staring into nothing with the hollow eyes of people who'd lost hope. 1 young man couldn't be more than 20, coughed wetly, blood staining his lips. Infection, probably. Without proper medical care, he had days at most. They've been here since Eldermire, she said quietly. Months without support, without supplies. Until someone started diverting medical shipments to them, Shade finished. The Nithorian crown pendant pulsed again, stronger this time. Caelithra's hand drifted toward it, frowning. Something's changed. The energy signature is... Inside the temple, light flared. Not firelight, portal light. The ancient gateway was activating, its dormant runes beginning to glow with renewed power. They've almost got it working, Shade hissed. If that portal opens... They escape or reinforcements arrive, Caelithra finished. Her hand moved to Moonshadow's hilt. We can't wait. Shade's expression was grim. 2 of us against 4 elites. Poor odds. Caelithra's lips curved into a cold smile. Only if they see us coming. Understanding passed between them, Queen and Captain, 2 Umbra Knights who had spent years perfecting the art of killing from darkness. This wasn't a battle. This was an execution. I'll take the sentry, Shade said. You disable the portal workers. The one pacing between the wounded? Together, Shade decided. He's in the open. Hardest to approach unseen. Caelithra nodded once. The shadows around them seemed to deepen, responding to their presence, to their intent. When they moved, it was as if the darkness itself had come alive. The sentry never knew what killed him. One moment he was scanning the perimeter, his Voidstone-enhanced rifle held at the ready, eyes sweeping the tree line for any sign of approach. The next, a hand materialized from the darkness behind him, Shade's hand, covering his mouth even as a blade found the gap between helmet and collar. The sentry's eyes widened in shock, then went dim. Shade lowered the body silently to the ground and dissolved back into shadow before the corpse had finished settling. Inside the temple, the 2 elites working on the portal were too focused on their task to notice. One knelt before the ancient gateway, hands moving in complex patterns as he channeled energy into the dormant runes. The other stood behind him, monitoring a portable device that measured magical flow and stability. Convergence in 3 minutes, the standing elite reported. Once we hit critical threshold, the portal will open for approximately 60 seconds. That's our window. Understood, the kneeling one replied. Signal the others. We need to... He never finished the sentence. Caelithra stepped out of a shadow that shouldn't have been deep enough to hide a person, Moonshadow already in motion. The silver blade sang through the air, its enchanted edge catching the portal's light as it arced toward the standing elite's throat. He had just enough time to register her presence, a woman in dark armor, eyes glowing with an unnatural light, blade gleaming like captured starlight, before his head separated from his shoulders. The body remained standing for a heartbeat, then crumpled. The kneeling elite spun, his hand reaching for the rifle at his side, fast, well-trained, but not fast enough. Caelithra's blade took his hand off at the wrist. Before his scream could fully form, her follow-through strike opened his throat. He fell backward, blood spraying across the ancient stones, his last sight the cold, impassive face of a queen who had learned to kill without remorse. She was already moving, melting back into darkness before the bodies hit the ground. Outside, the pacing elite had just noticed the sentry's absence. "Corvin," he called, moving toward where the guard should have been. "Status report." His hand was on his rifle now, senses heightened, instincts screaming danger. He activated his helmet's enhanced vision, scanning for threats. The readout showed nothing. Empty ruins, wounded soldiers, shadows. Then the shadows moved. Shade materialized 5 feet in front of him, just appeared. As if reality had simply decided he existed now, his massive greatsword already mid-swing. The elite's enhanced reflexes saved his life. He threw himself backward, the blade missing by inches, and brought his rifle up to fire. The shot went wide as Caelithra appeared behind him, her blade stabbing through the gap in his armor at the small of his back. The elite screamed, twisting, trying to bring his weapon to bear on this new threat. But he was already dying, organs pierced, spine severed. Shade's second strike took his head. The wounded soldiers had been watching. Most were too weak to do more than stare in horror, but a few tried to cry out, to warn the last elite, the one who'd gone into the temple's side chamber to gather supplies. "Ghosts," one of them gasped, the word barely audible. "They're ghosts." The final elite burst from the side chamber, his voidstone rifle already discharging. Energy bolts tore through the space where Caelithra had been, superheating stone and vaporizing shadows. But she wasn't there anymore, neither was Shade. The elite backed toward the portal, his enhanced vision flickering between spectrum modes, trying to find his targets. The rifle's power cell hummed, fully charged, ready. He'd seen what happened to his comrades, killed by shadows that moved like liquid darkness. But he had the weapon that could stop them, the weapon that had nearly killed a pack operative during the Eldermire assault. "Show yourselves," he snarled, finger tight on the trigger. "Cowards!" "Fight like." Shade stepped out of a shadow directly to his left. The elite's rifle swung toward him, already firing. The energy bolt screamed across the space between them, a coherent beam of neural disrupting force designed to shut down nervous systems on contact. Shade saw it coming. His greatsword came up in a desperate deflection, the ancient blade intercepting the energy bolt. For a split second, the weapon held, enchanted metal scattering most of the discharge into harmless sparks. But not all of it. The edge of the blast clipped his shoulder, and Shade's world exploded into white-hot agony. His entire left arm went dead, not numb, not painful, just gone. Neural pathways severed by the weapon's terrible magic. The great sword fell from nerveless fingers, clattering against stone with a sound like a bell tolling. Among the wounded soldiers, someone gasped. They got him! They actually hit one. The elite saw his opening. His rifle's power cell was cycling, 3 seconds to full charge, 3 seconds to end this shadow that had killed his brothers in arms. He adjusted his aim, centering on Shade's chest, finger tightening on the trigger. But Shade was already moving. His left arm hung useless at his side, dead weight that his body no longer recognized as part of itself. But his right arm worked just fine. And he was furious. He'd been hit by these weapons before. Knew exactly what they did, knew that the paralysis would spread slowly from the impact point, creeping through his body like ice through water. Knew he had maybe 60 seconds before it reached his core and dropped him completely. The elite fired. Shade wasn't there. He'd closed the distance in 3 strides, moving with the desperate speed of someone who knew his time was measured in heartbeats. The energy bolt passed through empty air, where he'd been standing, scorching the wall behind him. The elite tried to backpedal, tried to bring the rifle around for another shot at point-blank range. His training screamed at him to create distance, to maintain his advantage. Too slow. Shade's right fist, driven by fury and Umbranite strength, and the cold certainty that this bastard had just made him drop his sword, slammed into the elite's throat with the force of a battering ram. Cartilage crumpled. The windpipe collapsed. The elite's eyes went wide with shock and terror as his body suddenly desperately tried to draw breath through a passage that no longer existed. His rifle fell from spasming hands, clattering uselessly to the stone floor. Shade didn't stop. His good hand grabbed the front of the elite's armor, holding him upright, watching with cold satisfaction as the man's face turned purple, as his hands clawed uselessly at his ruined throat, as death claimed him with agonizing slowness. When the body finally went limp, Shade let it drop. He stood over the corpse, breathing hard, his dead arm still hanging at his side. The neural disruption was spreading. He could feel it creeping into his shoulder now, his chest. Soon it would reach his lungs, his heart. But not yet. Not quite yet. The temple was absolutely silent. The wounded soldiers stared in horror at what they'd just witnessed. Their best fighter, an elite operative armed with a weapon specifically designed to kill supernatural threats, had shot one of the shadows at nearly point-blank range. They'd seen the hit land, seen the great sword fall. And then they'd watched the wounded shadow walk through the injury like it was nothing, close the distance, and kill their man with a single punch. "What are they?" someone whispered, the question barely audible. "What the fuck are they?" Caelithra emerged from the darkness near the portal, moonshadow still gleaming in her hand. Her glowing eyes swept the wounded soldiers, noting their terror, their complete breakdown of any remaining will to resist. Then her gaze moved to Shade, taking in his stance, his dead arm, the way he was breathing just slightly too hard. "You all right?" she asked quietly, switching to Nithorian. "I will be," Shade replied in the same language, his voice tight with suppressed pain and lingering fury. "In about an hour." "Can you walk?" "Yes." He glanced at his useless arm with disgust. "I hate these fucking rifles." Caelithra almost smiled. "I noticed." The portal flickered behind them, its energy destabilizing without the elite's guidance. The runes were dimming now, the convergence interrupted. Whatever window of opportunity had been opening was closing again. Caelithra moved to the control mechanism, examining it with the careful attention of someone who'd spent years studying magical technology. "It's shutting down. The sequence was interrupted when you killed him." "Good," Shade muttered. He bent awkwardly, using his good hand to retrieve his fallen greatsword. The weapon felt wrong in his right hand. He'd trained for centuries with his left as primary, but he managed to sheath it across his back with only minimal difficulty. Among the wounded soldiers, the reality of their situation was finally, truly sinking in. The elites who'd protected them were dead. The portal that represented their only hope of escape or rescue was failing. And the two shadows who'd killed 4 armed, trained, enhanced operatives in less than 3 minutes were now standing calmly amid the carnage, discussing their next move in a language none of the soldiers understood. One of them, the young soldier Caelithra had noticed earlier, found his voice. "Please," he said, the word breaking. "Please don't." Caelithra turned her glowing eyes on him. "Don't what?" "Feed us to your wolves," he managed, tears mixing with the blood on his face. "We've heard the stories. What you do to prisoners. Just make it quick. Please just make it quick." Understanding dawned in Caelithra's expression. She switched back to common, her voice carrying across the silent temple. "You think we're going to feed you to wolves?" Several of the soldiers nodded, too terrified to speak. "Where did you hear this?" she asked, genuinely curious now. "Command," another soldier said, his voice hoarse. "They told us." The pack takes no prisoners. They feed captured soldiers to dire wolves. Better to die fighting than be taken alive. Shade let out a short, bitter laugh. Propaganda! Effective propaganda, Caelithra added. She studied the wounded soldiers, seeing them clearly now. Not as enemies, but as victims of a different kind. Lied to. Abandoned. Left to die by leaders who'd fled at the first sign of defeat. Before she could say more, the sound of approaching engines cut through the night. Heavy vehicles, multiple units. The reinforcements had arrived. Shadow Team, this is command. Ashley's voice crackled over their comms. We're approaching your position. Sit rep? Shade activated his comm with his good hand. 4 hostiles neutralized. 20 non-combatants secured. Portal destabilized. Area clear. Copy that. ETA 1 minute. The wounded soldiers heard the vehicles approaching, and fresh terror rippled through them. This was it. This was when the wolves would come. When the stories would prove true. The first transport rolled to a stop at the temple entrance. Ashley emerged from the passenger side, her expression all business as she surveyed the scene. And at her side, massive and unmistakable, was Beta. The grey timber wolf stood nearly as tall as Ashley's waist, her thick fur silver-grey in the moonlight, her golden eyes sharp and intelligent as they swept the temple interior. She moved with the fluid grace of an apex predator, powerful muscles rippling beneath her coat. The reaction from the wounded soldiers was immediate and visceral. Oh God. Oh God, no. The wolves are real. The wolves are real. One soldier tried to scramble backward, his broken body barely responding, terror giving him strength he shouldn't have possessed. Another pressed himself flat against the wall, as if he could somehow disappear into the stone. The young one who'd been crying simply froze, his eyes locked on Beta with the glazed stare of someone whose worst nightmare had just walked through the door. Beta's ears perked forward at the commotion, her head tilting slightly as she assessed the wounded soldiers. Her nose twitched, cataloguing scents. Blood. Infection. Fear. So much fear. Ashley took in the scene quickly. 4 dead elites, blood on the stones, Shade standing with one arm hanging limp, Caelithra perfectly composed, and 20 wounded soldiers on the verge of complete psychological breakdown. Well, she said after a moment, one hand resting on Beta's head, I see you've been busy. More vehicles arrived. Medics, engineers, security personnel poured out, immediately moving to secure the area and assess the wounded. But every soldier's gaze kept returning to Beta, watching the Timberwolf's every movement with barely contained terror. One of the combat lifesavers from the 5077 Thief approached the nearest wounded soldier, a man with a poorly set broken leg and signs of infection. Hey, I need you to stay calm, the medic said, kneeling beside him. I'm going to check your vitals, okay? The soldier's eyes never left Beta. The wolf, he whispered. Is it going to... Beta? The medic glanced back at the Timberwolf, who was currently sitting patiently at Ashley's side, her tail sweeping the ground in a slow, relaxed rhythm. She's not going to hurt you. She's one of ours. But the stories are bullshit, the medic said flatly. He pulled out a medical scanner, running it over the soldier's leg. Black Dawn fed you propaganda to make sure you'd fight to the death instead of surrendering. It's psychological warfare, nothing more. The soldier stared at him, unable to process this information. His entire worldview, everything his commanders had told him about the pack, was crumbling in real time. You're really not going to feed us to the wolves? The medic paused in his work, meeting the soldier's eyes directly. No. We're going to treat your wounds, get you stable, and then you're going to answer some questions. That's it. No wolves, no executions, just medical care and conversation. Across the temple, similar exchanges were happening as medics worked on the wounded, each soldier expecting death, finding instead bandages and antibiotics and genuine medical attention. Ashley approached Caelithra and Shade, Beta padding along at her side. The dire wolf gave Shade a curious sniff, her nose wrinkling slightly at the scent of the neural disruption energy still clinging to his dead arm. "Your shoulder needs attention," Ashley said, gesturing toward the injury. "It's temporary," Shade replied, his tone making it clear he didn't want to discuss it. "How temporary?" "An hour, maybe less." He flexed the fingers of his good hand. "The paralysis is already starting to recede." Ashley studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Fine. But you're getting checked out anyway. These neural disruption effects can have complications if they're not properly monitored." She turned to Caelithra. "What about the portal?" "Disabled for now," Caelithra said. "They were close to reactivating it, but the convergence was interrupted when Shade killed the last operator. Someone with Eli's expertise should examine it properly." "I'll send her once she's back from assignment." Ashley's tactical mind was already cataloguing the ruins, assessing strategic value and threat potential. "What about intel?" "They've been here since Eldermire," Shade said. 2, maybe 3 months. Abandoned when Black Dawn's leadership fled. Someone's been diverting medical supplies to keep them alive, but it hasn't been enough." "They'll talk," Caelithra added. "They have no loyalty left to an organization that left them to die. And they're terrified enough of us that they'll give us everything they know." As if to punctuate her point, one of the wounded soldiers being loaded onto a stretcher by 2 medics caught sight of Caelithra watching him. He immediately went rigid, his breathing accelerating toward hyperventilation. "It's okay," one of the medics said, trying to calm him. "You're safe now." "Nobody's going to hurt you." "She killed them," the soldier whispered, his eyes never leaving Caelithra. "All of them. Like they weren't even there. Like they were nothing." The medic followed his gaze to where Caelithra stood, her Nithorian armor still splattered with blood, her glowing eyes reflecting the vehicle lights. Even standing still, she radiated a kind of otherworldly menace that made experienced soldiers nervous. "Yeah," the medic said quietly. "I heard. Try not to think about it." "How?" the soldier asked, voice breaking. "How do you not think about shadows that kill like that?" The medic had no answer. He simply finished securing the stretcher and moved the soldier toward the transport, hoping that distance and medical treatment would eventually ease the psychological trauma of what he'd witnessed. Ashley watched this exchange with a calculating expression. "They're going to have nightmares about this for years." "Good," Shade said, his voice cold. "Let them spread the word. Let every Black Dawn remnant know what happens when they try to reactivate portals or regroup for another attack. Let them know that the shadows are hunting them." "Ghost assassins," Ashley murmured, the title fitting perfectly. She glanced at Beta, who was now sniffing curiously at one of the dead elites, her nose wrinkling at the scent of voidstone corruption. "Though I have to admit, showing up with a timber wolf after they've been told they'd be fed to wolves, that's some psychological warfare of our own." Caelithra's lips curved into the faintest smile. "We didn't plan that." "Makes it even better." Ashley turned as one of her officers approached with a preliminary report. "What have we got?" 20 wounded, all in varying states of critical condition. 4 dead elites, all with precise kill wounds. Portal is dormant but intact. Engineering teams are standing by for examination. No other hostiles detected in the area. Casualties on our side? None. Shadow Team neutralized all threats before our arrival. Ashley nodded, filing this information away. "All right. Get the wounded loaded and transported to medical facilities. I want them under guard, but treat them like patients, not prisoners. We need them cooperative when interrogation begins." As the evacuation continued, one of the 5,077th sergeants approached Ashley. He was an older man, grizzled and experienced, someone who'd seen multiple deployments and thought he'd witnessed every flavor of combat the world had to offer. "Commander," he said, his voice respectful but uncertain, "I've been doing cleanup work in the temple, examining the bodies. And Ma'am, these kills were surgical. The elites never stood a chance. It's like they were fighting an enemy that didn't exist until it decided to become real. He glanced toward Caelithra and Shade. I've seen a lot of fights, a lot of aftermath. But this is something else. Ashley followed his gaze to the two Umbranites. Shade was grudgingly allowing a medic to examine his dead arm, his expression making it clear he considered the attention unnecessary. Caelithra stood nearby, watching the evacuation with those glowing eyes, her presence somehow making the entire temple feel smaller, darker. They're Umbranites, Ashley said simply, children of shadow and twilight. This is what they were made for. The sergeant nodded slowly, but the unease didn't leave his expression. The wounded keep asking what they are. If they're human. And what do you tell them? That it doesn't matter. The sergeant turned back to her. Does it? Matter, I mean. Ashley considered the question. She thought about Caelithra, the reluctant queen who left care packages for the desperate even as she carved through enemies without mercy. About Shade, the loyal captain who'd searched for years for his lost princess and now stood beside her, hunting the remnants of the organization that had betrayed them both. They're people, she said finally. People who've had everything taken from them and turned it into a weapon. People who choose mercy when they could choose slaughter. She paused. They just happen to be very, very good at killing. The sergeant absorbed this, then nodded and returned to his duties. An hour later, the site was secured. The wounded had been evacuated under guard. The portal had been tagged for detailed examination. Engineers were documenting everything, cataloguing the ruins for future reference. Shade's arm had begun to respond again, first with pins and needles, then with the agonizing fire of nerves reconnecting, and finally, with full mobility restored. He flexed his fingers experimentally, then reclaimed his greatsword with his left hand where it belonged. Better? Caelithra asked. Better, he confirmed, though I'm going to be sore for days. They stood near the temple entrance watching as the last transport pulled away. The ruins were empty now except for the engineering teams and security personnel maintaining the perimeter. They'll tell stories about this, Shade said quietly. The soldiers. They'll tell everyone what they saw. Good, Caelithra replied. Let them. Fear is a weapon like any other. And mercy? Shade asked. Was that a weapon too? Caelithra was silent for a long moment. They were already defeated. Broken. Killing them would have been efficient but pointless. She looked at him. We leave care packages for the desperate. Why should wounded soldiers be any different from starving families? Because soldiers choose their side, Shade said. Did they choose? Caelithra asked. Or were they conscripted, lied to, fed propaganda about us being monsters? She shook her head. The elites chose. They were true believers, willing to die for their cause. But the others? The others were just trying to survive, Shade finished. Like we are. Ashley's voice crackled over their comms. Shadow team, you're clear to return to base. Good work tonight. Copy that, Shade replied. Shadow team returning. Before they left, Caelithra turned back to look at the ruins one final time. The portal was dark now, dormant again. How many more were out there, she wondered. How many forgotten gateways waiting to be reactivated by desperate remnants? Come, Shade said softly. We've done what we can here. Together they melted into the shadows, two ghosts returning to the darkness that had birthed them. Behind them the ruins stood silent and empty, marked by blood and death and the memory of shadows that killed like nightmares made real. 3 days later, medical ward, Merc Dusk Base. Petran, the young soldier who'd wept and begged not to be fed to wolves, sat in a hospital bed, his wounds treated, his infections cleared. He'd gained a little weight. The hollow look in his eyes remained, but it was no longer the look of someone waiting to die. Ashley sat across from him, a datapad in hand. Beta lay on the floor nearby, her presence a constant reminder of that first terrifying night. But Petron had learned, slowly, carefully, that the Timberwolf was no threat. She'd even let him pet her once, her tail wagging lazily as his trembling hand touched her thick fur. "You're not in trouble," Ashley said for what felt like the 100th time. "We just need information." Petron nodded. He'd been through this before, but each session got a little easier. "What do you want to know?" "Other cells. Other soldiers who were left behind. Do you know where they are?" He did. He provided coordinates, names, approximate numbers. 3 more groups scattered throughout murk dusk. Maybe a 4th near the border regions. All abandoned, all dying slowly, all desperately trying to survive. Ashley noted each location, already planning follow-up operations. "What about sympathizers, civilians helping you?" Petron hesitated. These were people who'd risked everything to help abandoned soldiers. People who would face consequences if discovered. "They'll be treated fairly," Ashley said, reading his hesitation. "We're not looking to punish people for showing compassion. We just need to know who's still actively supporting Black Dawn operations." "A few," Petron said finally. "Mostly people who lost family during the war. They blame the pack. They think," he trailed off. "Think what? That Black Dawn was fighting for freedom? For independence?" He looked down at his hands. "I used to believe that too, but after they just left us." "You realized it was a lie," Ashley finished. "Yeah." Petron's voice was barely a whisper. "We were tools. Disposable. They never cared about freedom or independence. They just wanted power." Ashley nodded slowly. "Thank you, Petron. You've been very helpful." As she stood to leave, he spoke again. "The ones who came for us. The shadows." Ashley paused. "What about them? Are they always like that?" "Like what?" Petron struggled to find the words. "Like death pretending to be people." Ashley thought about the question. About Caelithra standing protectively over Shade's paralysed body, refusing to leave him vulnerable. About Shade killing a man with one hand while his other arm hung useless. About the mercy they'd shown when slaughter would have been easier. "No," she said finally. "They're just people pretending to be death." "There's a difference." She left Petron with that thought, returning to command where the intelligence he'd provided was already being analysed and prioritised. The hunt would continue, cell by cell, holdout by holdout. And leading that hunt would be 2 Umbranites who had learned to weaponise their greatest loss, the darkness itself. Chapter 3. Quiet Mornings and Distant Agitations. The cottage wore its quiet like a well-made coat. A pan kept warm on the hob, bread cooled under a folded cloth, and the window laid a soft square of light across the table. Aeliana ate the way she did everything now, measured, present. Gunnar sat opposite, chair tipped back a notch past sensible, sleeves rolled once. He watched steam unravel from his tea and pretended badly that the day might let them finish a meal. From the next room his tablet chimed. He didn't move for a heartbeat. "If that's a prince inviting us to a party," he said, deadpan, "I'm saying yes." "Go," Aeliana said. The corner of her mouth admitted she would too. He pushed off the chair, crossed to the sideboard where he'd left the tablet face down to keep the morning intact, and brought it to life with his thumb. Desiree, the header read. Urgent turned polite, as it always was in her hands. Ashley's tag sat just beneath, time stamped minutes ago. He read once for facts, once for edges, and came back without sitting. "Shadows finished it," he said. "Eastern ruins. 4 elites down. 20 prisoners in custody. Portal reactivations suppressed. No friendly injuries. No civilians hurt." Aeliana set her fork aside. "Mark it." "Calm," Gunnar said. He skimmed, made sure he wasn't softening anything by habit. POWS, treated and talking. Desera's asking Homeland for disposition. Aeliana poured tea into his cup without asking if he wanted it. Held with conditions and a quiet watch, she said. Transfer only if it protects trust better than keeping them here. Agreed. He set the tablet down, picked it up again, thumb still scrolling. There's a note on propaganda. Their ranks were told we feed captives to wolves. Omega would be offended if he understood slander. He understands tone, Gunnar said. Ashley countered with care in the open. It worked. People talk once they stop bracing for pain. He set the tablet on the table and finally sat, elbows on his knees. They flagged other abandoned groups scattered around the realm. That's going to pull at us. It should, Aeliana said. She laid her palm on the wood, not for emphasis, but to feel the grain. We move the chain, and we do not forget the people. Katrina and Shade are thorough, Gunnar said, reading between Desera's careful lines. 4 elites dead in under 3 minutes. The prisoners keep asking what they are. Umbranites doing what Umbranites do, Aeliana replied, which is why we let them. The psychological impact's working, he scrolled again. Black Dawn remnants are already pulling back from contested areas. Word spreads fast when your elites get killed by shadows. Aeliana considered this. Fear is a tool, but it must serve something larger, or it becomes its own master. They know. Gunnar set the tablet aside. The wounded were stabilized when reinforcements arrived. They're not just hunting, they're showing what mercy looks like. Then they understand the balance better than most. She stood, moving to the window where morning light cut across the cottage floor. The evidence chain leads to outer farms. Clara has the cache analysis. What do you need from me? It was the question she always asked. Not what do you want, but what do you need? The distinction mattered. Gunnar scrolled further, frown deepening. Desera added a note about Alpha. Says he's been acting strange. Won't settle, keeps pacing the perimeter, growling at nothing. Aeliana turned from the window. Is he injured? No. Medical cleared him. Gunnar set the tablet down, his hand unconsciously moving to his chest, where the pack bond sat like a second heartbeat. I can feel it. He's agitated, restless, but I can't pin down why. When did it start? 3 days ago. He stood, moving to the window beside her. Desera's worried it's PTSD from the Void Warlock fight. She thinks he's picking up a threat they can't detect. Aeliana studied his profile, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers flexed unconsciously. What do you think? Gunnar was quiet for a moment, reaching inward toward the bond, that invisible thread connecting him to the massive dire wolf half a realm away. Alpha's presence pulsed back, protective, agitated, something that felt almost like anticipation. I don't know, he admitted. It doesn't feel like fear or pain. It's more like... He struggled for the word. Like he knows something we don't. Something important. Perhaps he does. Aeliana's tone suggested she had theories but was keeping them close. Dire wolves have instincts that predate language. Sometimes they understand things before we do. Helpful, Gunnar said dryly. I didn't say it was convenient. She touched his arm lightly. If it becomes a problem, you can portal back. Check on him directly. And leave you here to handle princes and politics alone. I've survived worse. Her smile was small but genuine. Besides, Omega would never forgive you if something was wrong with Alpha, and you didn't go. Gunnar snorted. Fair point. He picked up the tablet again, scrolling to the end of Desera's message. She's keeping an eye on him. Says he's not aggressive, just off. Keeps watching the transport bay like he's waiting for someone. Or something, Aeliana murmured. Gunnar looked at her, catching something in her tone. You have a theory. I have instincts of my own, she replied, which wasn't an answer. But until I'm certain, speculation serves no one. He studied her for a moment, the slight curve of her mouth that said she knew more than she was sharing, the way her hand rested on the staff as if drawing counsel from it. After years together, he'd learned to recognize when she was protecting him from worry versus when she was simply waiting for the right moment. This felt like the latter. "All right," he said, setting the tablet aside with finality. "Keep your secrets, Guardian. But when Alpha's behavior makes sense, you're explaining it over dinner." "Deal." She returned to the table, reclaiming her seat with the easy grace that made even simple movements look deliberate. Gunnar joined her, the moment of mystery about Alpha filed away but not forgotten. "It'll require a full operation to go into Umbral," Gunnar said. "Strike team, extraction plan, exit strategy, and we'll need someone who knows Umbral's layout." "Rose has contacts," Aeliana said. "Former Black Dawn operatives who defected. Some of them operated in Umbral before Draven's fall." "That's assuming they're still alive and willing to talk." Gunnar's expression was grim. "Trinity's been hunting defectors for months. Anyone who knows too much has a target on their back. Then we offer protection." Aeliana's tone left no room for argument. "Sanctuary in exchange for intelligence. It's a fair trade, and it might save lives on both sides." Gunnar nodded slowly. "I'll have Dezera reach out to Rose. See what she can pull together." He paused, then added, "You know this is going to get complicated fast. The moment we start moving assets toward Umbral, Black Dawn will know we're coming." "They already know," Aeliana said. "Trinity escaped with that knowledge. The question isn't whether they're expecting us. It's whether they're ready. And if they are, then we make sure we're more ready." She met his gaze across the table, the morning light catching the silver in her eyes. "This isn't Eldermire. We're not walking into a fortress blind, hoping our firepower is enough. We plan, we prepare, and we don't move until we're certain." It was the Guardian speaking now, the strategist who'd spent centuries balancing realms, who understood that patience was as much a weapon as any blade. Gunnar had learned to trust that voice, even when his instincts screamed to act immediately. "How long?" she asked. "A week. Maybe 2. Gunnar's fingers drummed once against the table, a rare tell of his own impatience. "Long enough to gather intelligence, secure allies, and ensure Claura's evidence chain is solid. Not so long that Black Dawn can relocate the child. And if they move him before we're ready, then we adapt." He said it with the calm certainty of someone who'd watched plans fall apart and rebuilt them mid-battle. But I don't think they will. Moving a child, especially one with the Demon King's bloodline, requires infrastructure. Safe houses, loyal operatives, magical concealment. They can't do that quickly or quietly. Aeliana absorbed this, weighing his logic against her own tactical instincts. "You're betting they think they're safe in Umbral." "I'm betting they're arrogant," Gunnar corrected. "They've held that realm for years without significant challenge. They believe it's untouchable. That arrogance will buy us time. Until it doesn't." "Until it doesn't," he agreed. "Which is why we move decisively when we do move. One strike. Complete extraction. No second chances." The weight of what they were discussing settled between them. The reality that they were planning to infiltrate a Black Dawn stronghold, to extract a child who was, by blood and circumstance, the heir to everything they'd fought against. "What do we do with him?" Gunnar asked quietly. "After. Assuming we get him out." Aeliana was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of a question she'd been asking herself for days. "We protect him. We teach him. We give him a choice his father never had." "And if he chooses wrong?" "Then we deal with that when it happens." She reached across the table, her hand covering his. "But we don't condemn a child for his bloodline. We don't punish him for circumstances beyond his control. That's not who we are." Gunnar turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers. "The council won't see it that way. Half of them will want him executed. The other half will want him locked away, somewhere he can't become a threat. Then they'll have to argue with me, Aeliana said, and there was steel beneath the softness. I'm a guardian. My word carries weight in matters of balance and justice, and I say a child deserves a chance at something better than the legacy he inherited. Even if that legacy is the Demon King. Especially if that legacy is the Demon King. Her grip tightened. We break cycles, Gunnar. We don't perpetuate them. He studied her face. The determination, the compassion, the absolute certainty that this was the right path, even if it was the hardest one. It was one of the reasons he loved her. One of many. All right, he said. We extract the child. We protect him. We figure out the rest as we go. Together, Aeliana added. Together, he agreed. The tablet chimed again, a softer tone this time indicating a secondary message rather than an urgent alert. Gunnar glanced at it, then back at Aeliana. That'll be Clara with the forensics report from Eli, he said. Want to hear it now or after breakfast? Aeliana looked at the cooling food on the table, at the morning light that was already shifting toward afternoon, at the moment of peace they'd managed to carve out, despite everything pulling at them. After, she decided. Let's finish our meal. The world can wait another 20 minutes. Gunnar smiled, rare, genuine, and settled back into his chair. 20 minutes, then back to saving realms. Back to saving realms, she echoed. They ate in comfortable silence, the weight of their responsibilities held at bay for just a little longer. Outside, the realm continued its slow turn. Somewhere, Alpha paced and waited for something he couldn't name. Somewhere, a child grew up in a fortress of shadows, unaware that people were coming for him. But in the cottage, for 20 minutes more, there was just tea and bread and the quiet company of two people who'd learned that peace was something you protected fiercely, even when, especially when, the world demanded otherwise.